Bill. Welcome to our media availability. This is midweek. Senator Stevenson, come on in. We have members of our leadership here. Senator Dayton will be joining us, and we have Senator Escamilla representing the Democratic Party. We appreciate her being here. We try to include all voices in this discussion that we have after our morning floor time. We welcome those who are watching us or who are listening over the internet, and we'll start with media questions.
Can you talk at all about caucus yesterday? Did you discuss some of the options on raising more revenues for schools?
We did not talk about that yesterday at caucus.
I'm trying to remember what we talked about. It was bad going in, bad going out. So what did we talk about, Ralph?
Boy, I was just trying to think too. That was one day ago.
Was it?
I remember.
Trying to remember.
We went through a number of bills that
Yeah, it was
a lot of bills I know we talked about yesterday. I'd have to think, but it wasn't tax discussion.
Yeah, HB 11 was one of the ones that we talked about that we will be talking about.
We might get to that tomorrow, but if not, it'll probably be a discussion next week.
Okay.
As a follow-up to that question, President, do you have any, or any of the senators here, do you have any specific concerns about the way school funding is going to be accomplished here to get Utah at a better ranking nationally?
Well, I don't think we're funding to be ranked. It's more of an issue of the need to have a wage sufficient to attract teachers to the profession. It's getting enough money there to meet the needs of our education system. So I'm not looking for a ranking. I think that's the wrong purpose in pursuing more revenue.
Yeah.
And I've raised the question a number of times here and in other venues that I'm asked to speak in. When we look at this year and the indication of the normalization of revenue streams and what will be coming in for the needs of the state over the coming years, I question whether the revenue, the tax structure and the revenue streams are sufficient to meet the needs of a place that's going to double in population over the next 30 years. And we need to have robust discussions on those now and in the future, making sure that we are investing in our infrastructure, which is the proper role of government, and that's education structure, higher ed structure, transportation, recreational assets, as I always mentioned, because we are very proud of our state and the quality of life that we have. But there are a lot of people like to go camping, but if you can't get into a campground, how's that change the quality of life and the state that we've loved to live in? Or if you can't get your boat in on Jordanelle because there's 1,000 boats on the lake, how are we going to deal with those issues? And investing in our recreational assets is an important element of that too. Senator Adams?
Yeah, you're right on. We need to accommodate the growth that'll happen in our communities. And education needs more funding. There's no question about that. But when you talk about rankings, I've been told since as long as I can remember that Utah is either the lowest or second to lowest. And I was in a conference a few years ago, and we had the Indiana state superintendent. And I can't remember what meeting I was at, but he actually had gone through quite a bit of education reform, much like we're looking at right now. And he threw up a spreadsheet on an overhead PowerPoint presentation. And it showed Indiana #1 in the nation as far as percent of budget. And I was enamored by it. What a great thing, a percent of budget. And they were 55%, I think, of their budget was spent on education. But I looked down the list real quick, and Utah was number 5. And I fell over backwards, because I've always heard we were number 50. And as percent of budget, we were like 53%. at that snapshot in time. Now, I look at this per pupil number that we all look at, and it reminds me, and I've used this example before, of maybe working in New York City and making $200,000 a year and having one child. So your per family income is $200,000 per child. You come to Utah and you're making, well, let's say you have 4 children. Does that mean that you need to make $800,000 so you have a $200,000 per household income per child? That's just not realistic. We have twice the birth rate as the nation. The only way we're going to be able to function because of our birth rate is not try to move our wages up to $800,000 per household, because it's not realistic, because we need to be smarter now. Education needs more money, but I with the president 1,000%. We're not doing this to for a ranking. We're doing this for the kids and for the teachers. We have some of the best teachers on the planet. We know that for the amount of money we spend, we're probably the most efficient education system in the United States. We can do better though, and we want to do better, because education is the most important infrastructure for I believe out there.
Some of the best teachers on the planet are leaving Utah, though. How do you look at solving that problem if you can't attract them by at least a significant the kinds of things that would attract them? I mean, obviously, a lifestyle here is more than adequate in many respects, and in the estimation of a lot of people. But a lot of that also makes sense as how you value a specific profession. So, what kind of mechanisms are you looking toward to be able to attract the talent that would give us the best and the brightest?
Well, in the last 5 years, help me with those, maybe Senator Stevenson can help me with the statistics. In the last 5 years, I think we put another $1.5 billion into education. Probably still insufficient, but we're trying. In the time that I've been in the legislature, we've always held education harmless. We've taken money out of other programs to try to fund education. We're working, we're taking seriously the comments, I think, of Education First, or whoever the entity is that's talking about the income tax increase. We're working through that, but we're working through it not to try to increase our ranking or to do anything else. We're trying to do it because of just what you said. We want to keep qualified teachers. We value teachers, but we value even as much or more the teachers' kids. And we all have kids. I've got a number of grandkids. Don't want to say, well, a good number of grandkids, and I think and all of them live in Utah, every one of them. And I have a vested interest in trying to make their education. They all go to public schools, and I think we all know that we need to do as much as we can there.
Senator Escamilla, did you want to weigh in on this?
No, we're also waiting. I mean, I think the bottom line is this is going to require a look into our tax system, and there's more than just increasing income taxes. But we welcome the fact that there is an initiative that people are coming together, and it just says education is a top, if not the #1 priority. I think we know that. We hear it from our constituents every day, but we're underfunded, and we love kids, but they come with a price tag. As one that just had 2 babies in the last 2 years, I'm obviously concerned of that education system and what's there for my children, and so we need to move forward. And I think we're waiting to see how the initiative works. But to me, there is more than just increase income taxes. We need to look into more issues beyond that. And obviously, the teachers' pay is critical. KSL run a very sad story about 2 teachers, wonderful teachers that are having part-time jobs in the evening, just to be able to survive. And to me, it's horrible, because we should respect our teachers and provide them with adequate living wages.
Congratulations, by the way.
I think it's important to point out too that we're obviously going to need to look at our tax system, see if there are some reforms that are needed that we can do that will make a difference, that will raise some revenue. General fund revenues are just not keeping up with all the needs we have, and part of that is because so much of our budget goes to education. This year, the Education Committee, Appropriations Committee, has made a recommendation for a 3.0 WPU increase, and with the higher ed and the education request, it would put about education and higher ed at about 60% of our total budget for this year. Now, normally we hit somewhere around 50% of our budget. Senator Stevenson has mentioned a number of times that goes to education and higher education, or a little bit more in some cases. And over the past 5 years, we've put a lot of new ongoing money into education. And in the short term, while we're looking at how the initiative may play out and how we may be able to do other things, we do have this recommendation from our Appropriations Committee for this year that we take a look at. And I don't know how that's going to shake out. I suspect it won't be quite as high as they've recommended in some areas, but we haven't got our new revenue numbers out yet, do we, Senator Stevenson?
Be Friday.
Friday.
So, you know, we're making a concerted effort every year to try to find everything we can to help education. It's very important to us. It always has been our #1 priority and always will be. So hopefully we can find something that works for us.
Other questions on this issue?
It's just a clarifying question. You said 60% of the budget, I guess that's new spending minus earmarks.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Our discretionary budget appropriations.
Well, it probably doesn't include the education earmark.
I explained to the governor's office the other day that the largest earmark we have is WPU. If we earmark 3% of that budget this year, that's money we have to match or have to come up with next year. Out of and we had a little discussion on that. They think they won, and I think I won. So.
All right, let's go on to.
Can I just one.
Sure.
Yeah, we will normally when you look at our budgets, you look at education and higher ed, and we will approach the 2/3 mark. That's been pretty standard in the state of Utah for quite a while. We're at 48–50% of our new money will go to education every year. It's been going on for a long while, and the recommendation that's come out of higher ed, it's higher than that this year. Now that I'm not sure we're going to match that to make that recommendation stick, but that's what it is.
So let's, we have Senator Dayton with us to answer any questions on the bill that we addressed on the second reading calendar today. I can't remember the number of it now, but I just wanted to maybe,
Remembers the number.
I just want to preface any discussion on this that we had a bill that come over from the House, and we have looked at the language of that, and we decided we'd add language to the bill in those different spots that we may not consider or seek to discover the political affiliation of a person when considering the person for appointment or reappointment. Our desire is to get the best people possible in these positions, and there are a lot of qualified Democrats, there's a lot of qualified Republicans, there are a lot of qualified Libertarians, Constitutional Party, but that should not be the consideration, especially for these boards, and that's why I think we got a 21 vote from at least the majority caucus. Senator Dayton.
I'll just say that I am in awe of this state. We need 3,500 people to fill the boards and commissions. And it's not just a body, it's people that have certain qualifications. Sometimes it requires an advanced degree. Sometimes it requires a geographical location, which is a huge sacrifice. Sometimes it requires expertise in a field or a certain amount of history in an area. And I'm impressed that there are so many people who are willing to serve. These volunteer positions are not paid and share their expertise. I think it was important that we address this issue today because people can go quickly to the courthouse and change their political affiliation so they could qualify to be appointed, but they can't change their history or their educational expertise, which is mostly what is needed and required to fill these boards. So I've been appreciative of the support of my colleagues today, and hopefully that kind of support will stay as we go through the vote again on the third reading calendar.
And we pride ourselves on a diversity of voices. Senator Escudilla?
Thank you, President. The minority party has been, I think, very outspoken, and we feel this is just limiting diversity of voices in commissions and boards that were created by statute. So they were their own individual bills when they were created, and they've had a process to have those requirements of membership. We don't think this is the right way of handling that, and it's unfortunate because out of the, I think it's 380 plus boards and commissions, this is impacting the ones that we think really the public is looking to have a broader representation based on the topics and things that are being discussed. I don't think this limits the hands of the governor. I've actually been in the position of helping the governor, as a staff person for the governor to help find those individuals, and it is challenging because it is a service, it's volunteer service, but I think if we welcome the governor's office reaching to the minority party if they are looking for people all over the state of Utah, because we certainly know people in other parts of the state outside of Salt Lake County if we only represent Salt Lake County. So we feel this is not the right approach in terms of policy. I think it does a disservice to all those bills that already passed many years before. And, we'll continue to raise our opposition, but we respect the process as well. Thank you,
It
President.
wasn't entirely on party lines, but pretty close. So anyway, we'll take any questions on that.
Senator Escamilla, does the change made over in the Senate make it any more palatable, saying that you can't seek out what someone's affiliation is when making an appointment? I understand your concerns, but does that make it any easier to?
No, we don't think that really helped or changed anything. I think that it's like saying it's your universe of people that you know. I mean, we have this conversation when we try to bring more women to positions of leadership and our other type of voices to the conversation. So, I'll say this, it doesn't go to having, I think they did have some boards that were excluded, that were protected, and we appreciate that component. But in terms of the policy itself, we think it does the same, just with a different type of language.
And Senator Dayton, are there other changes in the bill since it's come over from the House? Are the same boards and commissions being dealt with, or? I apologize, I missed the Senate hearing on it, so.
I can't imagine where you'd want to be other than the Senate.
Spoken like a great former House member.
Second substitute does not allow us to consider the political affiliation. Instead of addressing that you can't have more than certain numbers of people from one party, it says you can't address it, which of course honors the 613,439 unaffiliated voters in the state, because they have far better representation options than the parties. And also we need to note, and I didn't say this in debate, but registered Democrats in the state are about 11%, and their representation on these boards and commissions is 17%. So we made those adjustments, and it addresses all 28 boards.
But we didn't add or subtract any of the boards from the bill that came over.
This addresses all 28 boards.
So
Okay,
it's still
but
the
it's the
PSC.
same as from
Yeah.
the House? Okay.
This addresses all 28 boards.
Now all of them are there.
So it's still the PSC, still the DAC, and the other boards and commissions that were in the original bill?
Right, right.
Okay.
That's-
And it's important, last year, the party membership requirements were changed from high-profile boards, the Board of Regents and the Transportation Board. And I haven't noted a challenge in them functioning or increased partisan attacks on their work since those changes were made.
Senator Dayton, I'm just trying to get an idea, I'm over here. Trying to get an idea of the problem that you're trying to fix. How many of these board appointments remain vacant because of the requirement?
I'm sorry, I don't know the exact number, but I know that there have been several that have weighed in, including the treasurer, because he's got certain requirements, like it has to be people with financial expertise. And they have been functioning without a full board because they haven't been able to fill some of those positions. I don't know the exact count on all of those, but I do know there have been a number of boards and commissions where there are people who are willing to serve but not willing to change their party affiliation. They have the educational expertise. There has been a trend in the last several years in the legislature when new boards and commissions are created to not put any focus on party affiliation. So that it's obvious that going forward, that's a better way to do it. It also, the one diversity it does address, and I think this is crucial, on several of the boards, it says there needs to be some geographical representation. And I think that is very important because we know of a few people who have family-owned businesses. There's a man on the Health Data Commission, for example, that closes his family business and drives up every 2 weeks for a full afternoon to donate his time. But that's a long way to go, and not everybody's willing to make that kind of concession from their work all across the state. So we need to make sure we have some geographical diversity because that is very important.
Any other questions on this issue?
Right. Just say, I served on the Transportation Commission for a few years. And I suppose there was, and I think I might know, I'm trying to guess who was in what party. But in that commission, party affiliation had, I'd say, 0 or a -5 to do with what you're talking about. It's exactly what Senator Dayton is talking about is geographic diversity. I mean, along the Wasatch Front, many people have a tough time figuring out what a crisis is for congestion in Moab versus what it is in Provo or Ogden. And if you don't have that geographic diversity, that's a lot more important than any type of political diversity.
It is important that we have those voices from all over the state, and I think it's really important to remember none of these boards are advancing a party or a platform or a candidate. None of them are tasked with that kind of assignment. That's not what the purpose of these boards is. We're trying to access the expertise and the willingness of the citizens to have a participatory government. And when you realize that you've got over 3,000 people willingly participating on a volunteer basis to give guidance and direction on boards of oil, gas, and mining, or data collection or whatever, just for the benefit of the state, I'm impressed that we have that quality of people and that we have those options where we're asking people to be involved and people are willing.
Any questions from
It does not look like we have any at
the
this time.
internet, watching or listening? Any other questions?
If I could just follow up on what you're saying, though, the opposition to this bill has been that, especially with the Public Service Commission, or you mentioned Ogden and the boards that they have there, the Air Quality Board, that these are boards that advocates, at least, are concerned are going to be co-opted by the industry members, and they felt like this partisan requirement prevented that to some degree, or at least provided some balance on a philosophical viewpoint. You're eliminating that and restoring these boards that were previously exempted. Does that not make the bill more problematic in that direction?
I don't think it does because there's also another problem. Several of these boards require that you have municipal government officials as participants. You have to have a certain number of local government involvement. Well, we all know that municipal elections are nonpartisan, so there's immediately a problem in trying to construct the board. If it's based on you can't have more than certain numbers of a party, you're required then to go to these, whether they're judges or city council members, and say, we need to know what your party affiliation is. And most of them are unaffiliated and run as a nonpartisan election. So even filling those little requirements creates a problem.
Maybe a better way to solve that would be to try to single out what organizations ought to be represented and try to figure a way to get somebody from that organization on the board regardless of political party.
And you do have that in one of these agricultural boards. One of those requires that you have somebody representing the wool growers and somebody that represents the cattlemen's. And I mean, there is a pretty good explanation of how to create these, but what we're doing is basically saying we want people with expertise in the community who are willing to give of their time and be part of the governmental process. We need their input.
Thanks for your participation today. And we'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow.
Good clarif-